Hello, this is Chuck Dransfield, and I thought it would be fun to take people through my process, take you into my world of how I do one of my portraits. And in this case today, I have chosen the incomparable and magnificent Miss Judy Garland. I am personally of the opinion that Judy was the single greatest talent to ever emerge from the days of the old Hollywood studio system. And I think that would even hold true today. There was just nothing this woman couldn't do. We, of course, know her for her magnificent, sublime singing voice. But had she not sung a note, she would have been among our finest dramatic actresses. I think one of our best comedians. Even Lucille Ball once stated, something, I'm not all that funny in person. You want to know who's funny? Judy Garland. She's the funniest woman in town, and in comparison, she makes me look like an undertaker. Judy could dance. When she danced, she could hold her own with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire. People forget how good she was. Judy had this special quality when she was on stage. It was like turning on 500,000 watts of electricity. I have spoken to people who saw Judy perform in person. I have a good friend who knew Judy Garland, who has shared quite a few stories with me. And I'll tell a few here as I'm working. But for the moment, I'm going to complete the inking part of this drawing. And as you can see from what I've done, I sketch it out in loose form in pencil first. I use just a plain number 2 pencil, a school pencil, where you get a box of 12 for $2 or $3 at Target. That's what I like to work with. I've been that way ever since I was a kid. I love cheap, basic art supplies. And what I'm using to ink this drawing with is a simple Bic ballpoint pen. When I was in college as an art major, the instructors were always trying to persuade us that we needed the most expensive art supplies. You must have this $50 sable brush. You must have these inks. You must have these wash paints because they're the finest of quality. And, I went along with that. But I later found I did just as well with my number 2 pencil, my Bic ballpoint pen, and my cheap acrylic paints. And rarely do I work with a brush that costs more than $4 or $5, if even that much. I get upset when people tell me they'd love to take up art, but they don't think they can afford it because it's so expensive, and that just is not true. If you want, you can go to the school supplies section at the grocery store and get all the art supplies you need to do some beautiful work. All it takes is your talent and your creativity. And I might add that people who think they can't draw realistically, therefore they can't do art, that's not true at all. I have a good friend who I always knew. I knew she had a great artistic eye. I could tell this from her taste. I could tell this from her photography. But she felt she couldn't draw realistically, so I bought her a set of acrylic paints and encouraged her to take up abstract work. And let me tell you, she's doing some stunning pieces right now, and her talent is beyond approach. I'm so proud of her. So I just want to put that out there to people. Express your creativity in any way that feels right to you, and I have a feeling it's going to be perfect just as it is. So anyway, here I am working on my Judy Garland, getting her to progress along. I chose this particular photograph from this specific time in her life. It was when she was making the movie A Star is Born in 1954. The Wizard of Oz is, of course, her most celebrated and beloved film, but by far the greatest showcase the woman ever had in the motion pictures was this movie. And it was always designed to be the showcase for the ultimate star. It gave her a chance to do her drama, do her comedy, sing her heart out, dance, and show us exactly why she was the greatest entertainer in the world. It was coming after a down period for her. She had reached a point of no return when she was at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in the late 1940s. The studio had been pushing her extremely hard, making her work unbelievably long hours, sometimes 6 days a week. The stories of the diet pills, sleeping pills, pep pills, we all know that. And you can't keep doing that without it coming to a head. And that's what happened around 1947-48. She was showing up tardy on the film sets, if she was showing up at all, even. There were days she just could not work. She was suspended several times. She was supposed to have played the role of Annie Oakley in Annie Get Your Gun, Ethel Merman's great Broadway triumph, which should have been her triumph, Judy's triumph. But she was fired from the production. Finally, it was her last film, Summer Stock. She was let go. And Judy was beyond despondent. There was a story that came out that she tried to commit suicide by slashing her throat. The truth was, it was just a slight little scratch on her throat made with a tiny piece of glass, and the doctor put a Band-Aid on it. But word got out in the press, and it was unbelievably scandalous and devastating. And it was like now the public knew the ugly truth of what was going on. There was a great story where defiant Katharine Hepburn, let herself into Judy's house and did not even see Judy. Judy apparently was upstairs in her bedroom, and Kate, from the bottom just yelled up, Yo, Judy, I'll have you know you're one of the 3 great talents of this world. Get your act together. Now, I wonder who Kate was referring to when she said you're one of the 3 great talents. Was she referring to herself and Spencer Tracy in addition to Judy? I also heard that Fanny Brice, the great Fanny Brice that Barbra Streisand portrayed in Funny Girl, also came by the house to give Judy pep talks. Her great friend Gene Kelly was there. Bing Crosby would put Judy on his radio show to just keep her before the public eye and to let her know that she was loved. And it was such an act of kindness when Judy was basically unhireable. She had become like a pariah in the industry. There was a touching story where Bing Crosby introduced Judy, and she was backstage and she was terrified, and Bing spoke warmly to the studio audience. He said, our girl has had some trouble, but right now, let's just give her our love. Let's just give her all of our love. And Judy came out to a massive ovation, and she was crying. And if you listen to those shows, it's just beautiful. You can tell how moved she was. And, wow, Judy just could tug at those heartstrings. And sometimes when she was at her lowest, that's when people seemed to empathize with her the most. She had this amazing every woman quality. For all of her superstardom and her bigger than life qualities, she still could be like every woman to people. And I think that was shall we say, the secret sauce to her career. When Judy was no longer able to get film work, she was persuaded to do a concert at the Palace Theater in New York in 1951. That concert was a triumph, and it broke attendance records and set the stage for a whole new set of strings and the bow that she played her violin with. She embarked upon a legendary concert tour that she would be doing until her dying day. And it became something she was just as legendary for as her motion pictures. It was in 1954 that Judy was summoned back to Hollywood by Warner Brothers. And the movie A Star Is Born was tailored just for her. Wonderful score, a book, a screenplay written by Moss Hart. Ira Gershwin did the lyrics for her. It's a breathtaking movie to watch. When she sings "The Man That Got Away," I defy anybody to not be left breathless. But unfortunately, Judy did hold up production. There were a lot of problems, delays. It ended up adding considerably to the cost of the film. And the film did not make a profit as a result. Another problem, the film was originally over 3 hours long, and theater owners complained that this was too long to fit in multiple showings throughout the day. So Warner Brothers seized the prints of the film after about 2 weeks and did a butcher job on the film, cut some major moments out of the movie, chopped it up. It was devastating to Judy, and many feel that some of the best parts of her performance got lost. She was nominated for an Oscar. To this day, many feel she should have won, and it's one of the greatest slights of the Motion Picture Academy, but she lost the Best Actress Oscar to Grace Kelly that year. She had just given birth to her son Joey, and she was in the maternity ward in her own room. And because people were so convinced she was going to win the Oscar, cameras were brought in. Television cameras were put outside the window of her hospital room. They actually built a multi-tier platform just for this, so she could accept her Oscar on live television. Well, as we know, that did not happen, and Judy would later joke about this in her concerts. She had this amazing self-deprecating humor, and it gave her a lot of material for a long time to come. But my friend who knew her said that this was a sore spot for her. She would grumble well into the 1960s, "That should have been my Oscar." And I should mention my late friend Al Morley, who did know Judy Garland very well, and he shared with me some of the best stories. He said this went back to 1961, and he was the stage manager for the Billy Barnes Revue, which was practicing for a show at the Coronet Theater in West Hollywood on La Cienega. And at the time, there was a Mexican restaurant across the street. Well, everybody was in there rehearsing and singing loudly when in walked this tiny little woman. You know, she wasn't more than 4'11", and it was Judy. And she just said, oh, please excuse me, but I was across the street and I heard this marvelous got out a whole chair, and they started the whole show over from the beginning just for her, and Judy was applauding, cheering, encouraging. And then when it was over, she said, "You know what? I want to invest in your show." And she reached in her purse and pulled out a wad of money and the stage manager and Billy Barnes were going, "Oh, Judy, no, please put your money back." And she goes, "What? You mean my money's no good here?" So they accepted her investment and they invited her to the opening night. Except there was a problem. There was the show was a parody of old Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, and there was this section where they were somewhat viciously making fun of Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney. I mean, it was like nervous, neurotic Judy with a martini in her hand and popping pills, and they were like, "Oh no, what are we gonna do? We better cut this number. We better not keep it in." And then others were saying, "Well, it's too late to change the show now, and the audience is out there. We got to go through with it." Judy showed up. They had a seat for her up front row center, and she was like, are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? I don't want people recognizing me. You'll sit me in the back. Put me in the back." So they moved her seat to the back area, and that's where she watched the show, and they were all nervous because the big number was starting to come up. Well, about a third of the way into the number, the actress popping pills and swilling a martini, Judy Garland had her program rolled up in her hand like a bat, and she was walking down the aisle going, "You there, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you because you're so darn good." And then she turned around and the audience started cheering and applauding, and Judy jumped up on the stage and started singing with the woman who was imitating her, and it just brought down the house, and it showed what a great sense of humor Judy Garland had. So anyway, here you are, you're seeing my process as I'm drawing and painting. I always love to meditate as I'm doing this. I love to touch base with the soul of the person I'm working with. I think that particularly makes a difference when I get to the eyes. Eyes are one of the first things I normally do in a portrait. And if I don't get the eyes right, I consider that non-negotiable, and I will toss that portrait out, because the eyes are where, I know it's cliche to say this, but it's so true. It's where the soul of the person is. It's where you're looking into their soul, their personality, their thoughts, their feelings. It's what gives that intimacy to a portrait. And I always strive to capture that in some way. Judy has always had particular meaning to me. I've read her biographies, I've watched her movies, I've been enthralled with her voice, and her soul easily speaks to me, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to choose her as a subject to do this portrait. So I'm just taking you into my world. Normally I don't do this. Normally I'm extremely private about showing my process, and a lot of it, as you can see here, is a portrait often looks a bit messy in the beginning. It doesn't look like anything when you're just laying down these base colors, when you're just putting down the initial line work. Many years ago, when I was just out of college, the only job I could get that summer was working in a theme park as a portrait artist. So in like 100-degree humid heat, I had to sit with messy pastels. I had pastel dust all over me, and I would be churning out portrait after portrait after portrait. And they were insistent that we have our back turned so people could line up against it behind us to watch. And that was kind of horrifying for me, and it was difficult. And again, a portrait often is going to look bad in the beginning. Like when you're doing a pastel, you're going to lay down your base colors. It's not going to look like much. So I would have people behind me going, "Well, he's not very good, is he? Ooh, that doesn't look anything like her." And of course, the person I'd be doing the portrait for would hear this, and I'd have to assure them, it is going to look like you. It's going to look great. Just give me 10 or 15 minutes here. And then, of course, I would have a finished portrait that I would show them. But it's a little element of that here, but I thought it's time to start sharing what I do. And maybe demystify the process a bit, or maybe make it more mysterious. I don't know. You can decide. You know, Judy, of course, was the friend of my friend Al, and he had another story that was very funny. It was a Saturday night, and they were driving through West Hollywood past all of the gay bars, and Judy suddenly decided she needed cigarettes. She reached in her pack and there were none in there, and she said, "Pull over the car, pull over, I've got to get cigarettes." So here it is on a Saturday night in West Hollywood, and there is a bar filled with gay men, and in walks Judy Garland, bigger than life, coming up to the cigarette machine, and the whole place hushed quiet, like a gasp. And she's like, "Don't mind me, boys." And she got her cigarettes, waved everyone, blew a kiss, and went out the door. She had a glass of vodka in her hand, and she left that glass sitting on top of the cigarette machine. Al said the following Monday, in the front window of the 4-star bar was that glass with her lipstick print under a little glass dome on a pedestal with a neatly typed card saying, "This was the drinking glass of Miss Judy Garland, who was here on so-and-so date." I always thought that was a funny story. And I once talked with a woman who sat in the studio audience for a taping of her television variety show that she did at CBS. And at the time, it was very, very late. There were a lot of delays, a lot of problems. I don't know if it was related to Judy or if it was just technical issues, but the taping went on until almost 2 o'clock in the morning. And this woman I spoke to said that Judy insisted on having a caterer come and bring dinner to the audience. She took good care of people. And anyway, it was very late at night, or I should say very early in the morning, like 2:33 in the morning. This woman, who was a teenager at the time and had her high school friend with her, they were coming out and they were in the parking lot going to their car. And there was Judy all by herself, smoking a cigarette, just looking worn out, exhausted after quite an evening. And they got up their nerve and they approached her. Well, Judy, seeing that these were teenagers, immediately dropped her cigarette and snuffed it out with her foot. She did not want them to see her smoking. And they said that Judy was like a caring mother. She was like, oh dear, I'm so sorry we kept you out so late. Are you okay? Now, did you get enough to eat? Did you get enough to eat? Did you like your dinner? Now, how was the show? Was it okay?" And that was their memory of Judy, just how sweet and caring she was. I spoke to a man who used to be a dancer at 20th Century Fox, and he toured with Judy when she was doing her concerts in the 50s. And he watched a lot of her rehearsals, and he said there was never a star trip from Judy Garland. Never. In fact, she was quite insecure. She would sing her heart out in rehearsal. I mean, just blow everybody away. And then she'd walk up to people and go, "Was that okay? Did I do her all right? Should I do that over? Are you sure that's okay?" So that's how humble Judy Garland was. I also knew a man, his name was Charles Williamson, and he used to own the old George Cukor mansion in the Hollywood Hills. And he told me that Judy Garland had once been his house guest. And this was confirmed in Gerald Frank's biography of Judy Garland. He said that it was in the late 1960s when Judy was quite broke at that time. She was basically living like a bag lady. One has to understand that even though she was making all of this money from these concerts, She was in such debt, and she owed a fortune to the IRS. So every single thing she made was being just taken away from her before she could even have it. Charles told me she was homeless, and she was sleeping in guest rooms and on people's couches. And when he offered to let her stay in his guest room, all she had with her was a shopping bag. Apparently a very nice shopping bag from Beverly Hills, but all it had were 2 skirts and 2 blouses. Literally, that's all she had. A lot of her things had been confiscated when she could not pay her hotel bill, one of the places she was staying, and the hotel confiscated all. They locked the room and took all of her belongings, and this included her gowns, her personal clothing, even her orchestrations, her sheet music. All of this was taken away from her. I believe even the portable caps that she wore on her teeth were taken away, because if you see later day pictures of her in that final year, she no longer had her beautiful gleaming smile. Her teeth were dingy and crooked, and I think that's what happened to her. So here we had the great Judy Garland, destitute. But Charles and his partner happily welcomed her into their home, and she stayed in the guest room for about 3 months. He said that when she would go swimming in their pool, her bathing suit, quote-unquote bathing suit, was an old t-shirt that she fastened at the crotch with a big baby safety pin. That's what she wore in the pool. But he said she was so funny and gracious in so many ways, the perfect house guest. He told me one story. Liza knew she was staying there. I don't think Judy wanted Liza to know how bad things were, because I'm sure Liza would have pitched in and helped more. But Liza sent her latest record album for her mother to listen to, and Judy took it to the record player, put it on, and he said it was a very interesting thing to see. You know, it wasn't Judy the loving mother so much, it was Judy the professional colleague of Liza Minnelli, and she was standing there listening studiously, and she'd be like, no, okay, now that was good. That was good what she did there. Oh, no, that didn't work. That was good. Okay, now that was better. But it was a full critique that a professional would give to another. So they were amazed to watch that. They said that Mickey Rooney used to call the house a lot. He was always trying to get Judy involved in money-making schemes, like a series of Mickey and Judy talent and dance schools. And she'd have to say, Mickey, honey, I'm broke. I can't even get arrested right now. And then she would, after the phone call, she would turn to Charles and his partner and say, I pushed him in to leave me alone. He's just pestering me. I know she loved Mickey, but I think Judy was just getting her fill of a lot of things right then and there, and her patience was being tested. They said that when she would try to sleep, it was tragic. There were signs of things already going wrong, like congestion in her lungs. They told me they could hear her downstairs trying desperately to get to sleep, and her breathing sounded almost like a person dying. And Judy was extremely self-aware. She knew she had a serious drug problem, but it was like a demon that had grabbed her by the throat, and she would say to Charles, I just want to get off of these things so bad, but I can't. They'd said that Judy had no way to thank them for their hospitality, so the only thing she could do was to one evening put the Carnegie Hall record on the stereo, and she ran to the top of the staircase while the two of them sat on the couch below, and she proceeded to give the complete Carnegie Hall concert in full voice, just for the two of them, like she was playing to 50,000 people. She gave them the gift of a private concert. Oh my God, how I would have loved to have been there, even to have just been a fly on the wall. How incredible. My artistic process involves a lot of details on top of details. Like when I'm doing watercolor here, I want you to see how I put down thin, translucent layers. And my trick is to get out an old-fashioned blow dryer and just dry the steps, because otherwise, I can tell you, it's literally boring to sit and watch paint dry. And I think that's a problem a lot of people have with watercolor. They don't have the patience to let those layers dry properly, or they put too much paint down at one time. They just oversaturate the paper. And that's where you end up with a big muddied mess. I had this excellent teacher in high school when I was 13 years old, and she taught me one of the most important things I ever learned in my entire art career. I never was even taught this when I was in college. She said, keep a glass of water with you, a roll of paper towels, and constantly clean your brush. Put down thin layers, let them dry. Continually clean your brush as you're blending your color. And that's how you will get a nice, fresh effect. And that's what watercolor should look like. Fresh. Very, when I was in college, I was in one of my illustration classes at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I was the only one in there. I'm not patting myself on the back here, but I was the only one in there who could do a decent watercolor. Everybody in there was coming up with big, muddy, yucky messes. And finally the teacher asked me, why is it you're the only one who knows how to do this? And I said it was because of my excellent high school art teacher, Mrs. Susan Shaw. And he said, well, would you come to the front of class and teach us what she taught you? So with great delight, I shared Mrs. Shaw's technique with the other students, and people began to improve dramatically with their watercolors. And I later wrote her a letter and told her this. You know, I still consider her the greatest art teacher I ever had in my life. I want to make it one of my missions to make watercolor painting more accessible to people. It's one of my great loves. And I hear so many people tell me, oh, I hate doing watercolor. Oh, I didn't enjoy doing that. I can't do it. And my feeling is, yes, you can. You just need to be taught properly. And I'm hoping over a period of time, as I make more of these videos, I can break this process down better. I have to tell you that I'm a very intuitive painter. Despite my education, I tend to just get in my heart and I just start painting. So in doing something like this, it was a little difficult for me to break down my process to explain it to you. So I hope that I'm doing this, and I hope I'm going to get better at explaining this as time goes on. You are being taken into my world. You're seeing one of my celebrity portraits. As most of you know by now, I am a great lover of old Hollywood history, and I love tying in my knowledge of old Hollywood with these portraits. I thank you for bearing with me, and I hope that this has been of educational merit to you. One of the things I love about doing portraits, and I hope that I am successful in conveying this, is that I like to give an opportunity for souls to speak. I always say a little prayer of protection before I do a portrait, basically the impasse prayer. I ask for these souls to come forth and encode any personal message, anything they'd like to say within this portrait. And oftentimes that's something abstract, but it's something that I believe people feel. I believe that's within all of the little details, all of the little layers, all of the energy that I have laid down onto this paper and onto my canvases through my pens and pencils and and brushes. This is just such a joy of mine, and I always put my heart and soul into any piece of artwork that I make. I hope you can see that here. This is my gift to all of you. I thank you for letting me bring you along on my journey, because that's exactly what it is like for me when I do a portrait. It's like going on a journey. Many times I have no idea where it's going to take me, but it's always exciting. It's fun and it's exhilarating. So here we are. Here we have it. My fully realized and completed portrait of the incomparable Miss Judy Garland.